Good morning, Wabash. Speaking today at Pioneer Chapel will be Leslie Weirich with her talk titled Connection and Why It Matters. Leslie Weirich has been speaking on the topic of suicide prevention for the past 8 years. In 2017, Leslie began speaking on suicide prevention within her own community. Then in 2018, her story took a turn and made national news as a human interest sports story, which launched her public speaking career. In 2020, she resigned from her full-time job as a financial recruiter to begin speaking all over the nation. She focuses on youth mental health with an emphasis on young men, student athletes, and the military. In January of 2021, she partnered with Oak Lawn Community Mental Health Center in Northern Indiana as the first suicide prevention specialist, where she helped raise over $100,000 to put the Sources of Strength Suicide Prevention program in local high schools in her community. In 2016, her family established the Austin Weirich Memorial Scholarship Fund and has given away over $30,000 in college scholarships. She hosts an annual 5K every September to raise money for the fund, which has now been fully invested in the Community Foundation of Elkhart County, where all the donations are matched at 25%. Let's give a warm welcome to Leslie.
Well, good morning, Wabash College. It is great to be back here. I was here last September. Who heard my talk last September? Who was in here? Oh, a lot of you guys, okay. But some of you didn't, so I'm gonna do a little recap this morning of my why. You know, who am I? Why do I do this? You know, why does it matter, right? So I am a mental health public speaker. In the last 3 years, I have worked primarily with the military. I do a lot of work with the Army. I was at West Point. I've been to New York, Texas, Alaska, wherever they ask me to come and speak, because I want to talk about men's mental health. And I want to talk about young men's mental health. Because however you want to shake it out, suicide stats are always underreported. So 80% of all suicides in this world are men. 4 to 1. So that's why I'm here, and I'll tell you a little bit about my why and how my why never changes. My story doesn't change, but my work has really grown. Because my why will always be a big, strong, good-looking defensive end who played for Wabash. His name was Austin, okay? He loved this school. But at 2:30 in the morning, on Saturday, September the 10th in 2016, our life would change forever. My doorbell would ring, and there would be 2 police officers on my front porch. And let me tell you, that's something that no parent ever wants to see or hear. We opened the door, and the first police officer asked us if we had a son named Austin Weirich who attends Wabash College. Yes, this suicide happened on this campus, and we're going to talk about that too. All right? We said, yes, we do. He told us there'd been an accident. In Austin's townhouse that evening, Austin was with a young woman and he had shot himself. He told us they were life flighting him to St. Vincent's in Indianapolis, and we needed to get there as quickly as we could. There was only one problem. We were 2.5 hours away from St. Vincent's, and there was a rainstorm like I've never seen before in my life. I mean, rain and lightning and thunder just coming across the sky. But we knew we were going to face the longest and hardest night of our lives. And we were only about a half hour down the road when my cell phone rang. It was the emergency room doctor. He asked if we were on our way, and I told him that we were. And he wanted to know if we could pull over so he could talk to us. He told us he was sorry to tell us the ambulance had just arrived with our son, and there was no pulse. In that moment, my husband Keith, Austin's dad, who's about the most soft-spoken man I've ever met in my life, just hit his fist on the steering wheel and cried out, "Why, Austin? Why? Oh, why?" We sat there in that dark rainstorm night for about another 10 minutes, and then we drove on in complete shock and silence for the next 2 hours. We got to the hospital. Keith was looking for a place to park the car, and I ran into the emergency room to tell him who I was. And I saw this man walking toward me, and he had this white, crisp hospital jacket on. All I could do was stare at that jacket. It's all I could do. It was like visual calm in the middle of chaos. By that time, Keith was coming in, and he told us that his name was Chaplain Paul. And he asked if he could take us to the back, to the lounge, where we could sit down. Took a few minutes, and the nurse and the doctor both came in. They were both men. I thought that was interesting, since Austin attended Wabash. They asked if we wanted to see our son, and I have no idea where these words came from, but I said no, because our son's not even here anymore. That's a personal decision that my husband and I have never, ever regretted. But here's where the most amazing act of kindness and love and mercy came from that night. Because of a suicide in our state, I don't know about other states, but I know about Indiana, someone has to identify the body. We weren't prepared to do that. We couldn't do it. So somehow or other, I started just describing Austin, and I started talking about an injury he had on his left ring finger from football. And Chaplain Paul spoke up. He said, "Mr. and Mrs. Weirich, I'll go back for you on your behalf. I'll identify Austin's body for you." What an incredible act of love and mercy that could have only been given to us by somebody that had walked in our shoes. Before he went back, he knelt down and he prayed over us, and he asked God to give us the comfort that he had been given just 3 years earlier when he lost his only 17-year-old son. That's how we knew he was appointed to be with us that night. We'd spend the next several hours making decisions that no parent should ever have to make in the middle of the night. Are you listening to me, Wabash? Because I know you've had some rough days and some rough nights, but your life matters. You'll be missed. You will be missed. He helped us with organ donation. He helped us make funeral arrangements. Within the next hour, we were able to donate both of Austin's heart valves, his corneas, and all of his bone and tissue. Organ donation was so important to him. We knew that families were going to be getting calls and lives were going to be changing that night because of Austin's decision to become an organ donor. Somehow or other, that helped us. It made us feel like we weren't leaving everything at that hospital. It's been 8 years this month. 8 years. I can't believe it. Austin would be closer to 30 than 20 when he left us. But in my heart, he'll always be 20. And you know, sometimes it's easier to talk about this than it was 6 or 7 years ago, and sometimes it's harder because I just feel like I'm talking about it in the third person. You see, this is our life. This is our new reality. Are you hearing me, Wabash? Austin didn't graduate. He didn't go on to law school. He didn't get a job. We'll never see him get married, and we'll never become grandparents because in a split second, his brain got overwhelmed, he lost hope, and he lost his life. And he is deeply, deeply missed every single day. We wonder what he would be doing, where he would be if he were still here. But let me tell you a little bit about who he was for a minute, because I think he's a lot like a lot of you in here. I know Wabash College. I love Wabash College. Austin was a high achiever. He was the president of his freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior class at his high school. He ran track, he played football all 4 years he was there. He was voted scholar athlete in one or both of those sports every single year of high school. He was even nominated, which some of you probably are Hobie winners, he was nominated as the Hugh O'Brien Leadership Award winner, which you know is only given to one rising junior. You have to be nominated by your principal. Austin achieved that too. He went on to graduate above a perfect 4.0, taking weighted honors his senior year. And he received $26,000 in renewable academic scholarship, which allowed him to go on and come to Wabash and play football. So when he arrived here on campus, he was looking for every leadership opportunity he could find. He was the president of the Independent Men's Association here, which for those of you know, that's the gentlemen here that don't live in fraternities and you decide to live on your own. Austin was an independent guy, an independent thinker. He was also a member of the War Council. Everybody know the War Council? Wabash acts responsibly. And he was scheduled to lead the meeting for the War Council on the morning of Monday, September 12th of 2016. But unfortunately, our son Austin never showed up for that meeting. The topic was mental health concerns on campus, and he was supposed to lead the meeting. He never showed up for that meeting or any other meeting would he ever be in for the rest of his life. Now, as much as I'd like to tell you that was the last suicide this beloved campus would ever have, it wasn't, and some of you probably know that. The first year we were numb. We were just getting through. But the second year we wanted to do something on Austin's death anniversary. Austin took his life. For those of you who don't know, September 10th is World Suicide Prevention and Awareness Day. He died on that day. So on the 2-year anniversary, we wanted to do something meaningful. And we got a text message from one of Austin's former roommates. He said, "Mr. and Mrs. Weirich, I don't know if you heard, but Evan Hansen, the co-captain of the Wabash football team, took his life today. I'm sorry to have to tell you this today, but I just didn't want you to hear about it on the news." So on World Suicide Prevention and Awareness Day in 2018, you would lose the co-captain of your team. So our grief, which we were still learning how to navigate through, we now shared it with Chuck and Mary Hansen of Carmel, Indiana, and their family. Evan Hansen was only 21 years old, about to graduate with a double major in Spanish and biology. He had just stood on the football field on Saturday, being recognized as the co-captain of the team. He got up on Sunday morning and he went to practice, talked to his coaches, his teammates. He even had a meeting with his coaches. On Monday morning, Evan's dad would walk into the woods and find his body. Because in a split second, Evan gave up on hope. His brain got overwhelmed and he lost his life. And I know some of you have been there. I've been there. We've all been there. We've had these moments in life. But they're just moments. We're going to talk about how you can hang on here. So both of these young men knew each other, both played on the same small, all-male college team, and both died by suicide on World Suicide Prevention and Awareness Day. I couldn't make up this story if I tried. Nor would I ever want to. Feel free to Google 2 Wabash football players die by suicide if you want to know more. The following week, we were contacted by the Indianapolis Star, the largest newspaper in our state. They wanted to know if we'd share our story. They thought if both families shared their stories, somewhere in those stories might help someone else who was struggling. We agreed. Our story came out the following Wednesday in the Indianapolis Star. By Saturday, it made national news as a human interest sports story. Wabash, you don't want to make national news for this. No more suicides here. We've got to talk to each other. You've got your Wabash brothers. You got to lean on this brotherhood. Austin and Evan, they knew each other, but their backstories were different. Suicide is complicated. It's never about one thing. It's about a lot of little things leading up to a moment. And your brain gets overwhelmed. Especially if you're under 25. Raise your hand if you're under 25 in here. That's what I thought. So we're going to talk a little bit about that prefrontal cortex. That's the most important part of your brain. It's so critical. It does your thinking for you. It's your thinking brain. It's the front of your brain. Problem solving, higher level decision making. It's why they call it the executive function of the brain. And guess what? No matter how much you will it or want it, it will not be fully developed until you're at least 25. Austin had 5 more years. Evan had 4 more years. College is stressful. I know that. Short-term stress might help you a little bit. It helps you study for a test or get an essay done, right? But the kind of stress I came here to talk to you about today is long-term stress. Long-term stress. If it's left unaddressed, wow, it can wreak havoc on you. According to the American Institute of Stress, 4 in 5 college students experience frequent stress. 4 in 5 of you. And more of you are reporting it for longer periods of time. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? I mean, you've got football practice, lacrosse, you've got to study for a test, you have a girlfriend, you have a boyfriend, you have a million things going on. And then you have trouble concentrating. You're just flying off at everybody. You're irritated. You lack energy. Your appetite changes. You might even have trouble sleeping. Sleep is so important. Can I tell you how much sleep does for your brain? You need to sleep when you can. Now, I haven't come here in 45 minutes or less to tell you I can fix all your problems. But what I do want to tell you is you're not alone. You're not alone. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Everyone you know in here, you can look to the right, you can look to the left, you can look in front of you, you can look behind you. Everyone you know is fighting a battle that you don't know anything about. Every one of you. Some of you might be struggling with a roommate right now. You don't want to tell anybody. Maybe you're a little homesick. You don't want to admit it. It's okay. Maybe you're struggling with figuring out your schedule this year, when you're going to find time to study with athletics. Maybe you have family problems that you thought you left behind at home. Or maybe you're in a relationship that's just not working out so well since you moved to Wabash. And it's easier just to kind of stay in it than do anything to make a change. Whatever it is, you stuff it. You've got that invisible backpack back there. You put it in there, right? You keep on going. You go to class, you go to practice, you see your friends, but you don't talk about it. Nope. You don't tell anybody. The problem is, eventually that backpack's going to spill out. It's going to spill out in drinking every weekend a little too much. It's going to spill out in spouting off at people. It's going to spill out. You know, back in the summer of 2021, I got a message on my LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every day. Feel free to follow me. I write a mental health post every day. And this guy said, "Hey, Leslie, I'm a Wabash alum. I graduated about 20 years ago. I'm a lieutenant colonel at Fort Bliss Army Base in El Paso, Texas, and I just lost my 3rd soldier. Can you come on down here? I need him to hear a story from a mom." So the week before Christmas, 2021, I flew down to El Paso, Texas. They'd had 20 suicides that year on that base. 20. And 19 of them were over the breakup of a personal relationship. Can I tell you now, I can read about a suicide in the paper and I can tell you if there was a breakup of a personal relationship in the backstory. It's so common. There is no one worth taking your life over. You have so much ahead of you. But I've got to address the issue about relationships. We're going to talk about it for a minute here. So, I know you're thinking, well, Leslie, I've got my Wabash brothers around me. I'm good. Remember, life can get overwhelming in a heartbeat. You make that split-second decision to shut down that pain, because if you only listen to a couple things I say today, if you're zoning out, you're on your phone, whatever you're doing, if you only listen to a couple things I say today, here's one. Remember this. No one ever wants to take their life. They don't want to die. They're not trying to die. Austin wasn't trying to die. Evan wasn't trying to die. Their brain gets overwhelmed in a split second. It goes offline. Remember that prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, and that's where anger management is. Impulse control. It's all housed up there. So you're trying to shut that down. And when you shut it down, you lose your life. You just can't live with the pain another moment. So I've come here today to talk to you about a few things because my son loved this campus. Can I tell you, when I pulled in here this morning, I just felt, there's something about Wabash. Am I right? So I carry on his legacy. And I'm going to talk to you for a minute here like you're my own sons, okay? I'm going to be straight with you. I'm going to talk about personal relationships for a minute. Maybe some of you have somebody that followed you here through high school. And maybe it's a good relationship. I'm happy for you if it is. Maybe some of you, it's just easier to keep on going and let it kind of go away rather than do anything about it. But I'm going to go through a few warning signs with you, and I want you to just think. Sit there this morning, and I want you to think if you're in a relationship. One of them is intensity. When everything becomes very extreme and overwhelming, over the top. That's a red flag, guys. It's a red flag. Possessiveness. We know a little jealousy is normal and healthy, but when someone's checking your social media, where your car is, you're just, and whether this is you or them, it's not healthy. The next one's manipulation, and it can be a hard one to spot. You know you're being manipulated when you're being forced to do things that you don't feel comfortable with. That's a red flag, guys. Isolation. They ask you to choose between them or your friends. Them or your family. That's a big red flag. It's not healthy. Volatility is the last one I'm going to give you, and that's just you're overreacting to things. You're getting angry very easily. You're getting violent. You're yelling. You're threatening. And I'm going to tell you right now, if there is anyone laying hands on anyone else through violence, through anger, you need to get out of that relationship. You need to end it. It's never acceptable. Now, your Wabash brothers can keep you honest here, I know that. They can see things sometimes that you can't see. Austin's friends saw things he didn't see. We found out about afterward. My high-achieving son had several of those red flags, and he just kept on going. He let his 20-year-old hormones do the thinking for him. Do not think with your hormones. They will get you in trouble 100% of the time. Slow it down. If she's the one, she'll stick around. If he's the one, he'll stick around. Otherwise, slow it down. You know, if you got a friend that's in one of these relationships and you're trying to talk to them, you have to listen. Active listening could reduce our suicide rates by so much. It's not about fixing somebody. It's about holding space with them, being there and just listening. Don't criticize them for staying in the relationship. That's not going to help. Let them know you care. Let them know you're available for them regardless of their relationship status, because you want them to come to you. You want them to open up and talk. And remind them of their worth. Talk about their positive traits. We all need to hear something good about ourselves once in a while, don't we? You guys can do that for each other. I'm going to move off this topic of relationships, okay? I know you're like, ooh, thank goodness. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you for a minute about connection. All right? Now, I know you're going to tell me I am surrounded by Wabash brothers all day long. In my fraternity, when I eat, at practice, they're always around me. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not connection, okay? In fact, Dr. Vivek Murthy, who's our U.S. Surgeon General, our top doc, he issued a report last year, and I don't know how many of you read it, but if you want to Google it and look it up, Dr. Murthy's report on loneliness. He said that being lonely has nothing to do with being alone. You can be sitting in this chapel with hundreds of your Wabash brothers right now, and you can feel alone. I get it. I've been there. Listen to what he said it does to our health when we don't feel connected to somebody. They actually call loneliness the new smoking. It's as dangerous for your health to be lonely as it is to smoke 15 cigarettes a day. These aren't my words, these are the Surgeon General's. He told us that there's a 29% increase in heart disease from being lonely. It hurts our hearts when we're not connected to each other. Can you believe that? I do, I believe it. But what does it do to our mental health? Because I'm here to talk to you about your mental health, right? He said across all age groups are spending less time with each other than they were 2 decades ago. All right? And between the ages of 15 to 24, which is everybody in this room basically, there's a 70% decrease in your social interaction than there was a decade ago. Now I know what you're thinking. No way, Leslie, I got so many Wabash brothers around me. They're everywhere. The CDC tells us that 63% of young adults ages 18 to 25, that's everybody in here, that's all of you, 63% of you, this is going to shock you, are experiencing significant symptoms of either anxiety or depression right now. And 61% of this same age group reported feeling lonely frequently or all the time. Why do you think the suicide rates are 80% in men? I'm going to break it down for you like a mom here and keep it simple. You don't talk. Oh, you talk, but not about real stuff. You keep that in the invisible backpack. It doesn't work, guys. It didn't work for Austin, and it didn't work for Evan, and it won't work for you either. Gen Z, which is you, Gen Z, you have to be born between 1997 and 2012, so that's all of you in here. Roughly 65% of this age group report feeling lonely. Sometimes or always. So what is loneliness? What is loneliness? It's lacking that good social connection. Now, you can be in this chapel right now, and you can be sitting here feeling kind of lonely with all your Wabash brothers around you. That's normal. It's not good, but it's normal. Or you can be in a room with 1 or 2 other of your Wabash brothers and be in a deep conversation about something and be connected. You with me, Wabash? You got that? But here's the scariest stat of all of them. The scariest statistic is 73% of social media users, it's probably a lot of you, reported feeling lonely. 73% of social media users. So we know, Gen Z, you were born with a digital device at your thumbs. You grew up with technology, and technology can be a good thing. I'm not saying to get rid of all technology. But when you use it to escape a live conversation with a brother, when you use it to just be invisible, it's not good. It's not good. Because depression and anxiety are twice as high in groups that report loneliness, twice as high. So what are we gonna do about it? You ready for some good news now? You're probably about ready for some, huh? It's you and me. We're not waiting on the government to fix our mental health crisis. It's not gonna happen. We can individually do something to turn these numbers around. The most recent statistics tell us that suicide rates for men overall are 4 times higher than women. I've told you that. And the overall rates are up 62% over the past 10 years. Do you know we lost 50,000 people to suicide in our country last year? We broke a record. I don't know how many of you are from towns or cities that are 50,000 or less. I want you to think about that. If you know the population of your town, if it's under 50,000, raise your hand. Okay, so all of you, your towns are gone next year. The exit off the interstate, however you get there, it's gone. Think about that. Suicide is a preventable form of death. It doesn't need to happen. And it certainly doesn't need to happen here at Wabash. We gotta do better. Austin and Evan were not the last students to die by suicide here. I know that. There have been several attempts over the past few years. So let's talk about what we can do to turn it around. If you only walk out of here today with one idea, let it be this. We need each other. We need each other. We weren't created to be isolated. Dr. David Steneno, who's a professor of psychology at Northwestern University, said this: when our bodies endure long-term stress, not a little stress to get a paper turned in, but long-term stress, the wiring to offset that stress, guess where it's found? In human kindness and connection. Human relationships. We need them, he said, to feel safe, to cope with stress, to manage fear. Do you know connection, it actually physically lowers your blood pressure, calms you down. If you've got to go take a big test and you're all stressed out about it, go talk to somebody before you take that test. Even if it's for 5 minutes, it's going to calm you down. You'll probably do better on it. When you isolate yourself, your body dumps all this cortisol into your bloodstream. You know, that's a stress hormone. You got to offset that. How are you going to offset that stress hormone? You're not going to offset it by looking at a TikTok video. It doesn't happen. You're going to offset it by finding a Wabash brother and saying, hey man, I got to talk for a few minutes. Can we talk before I go take my test? Or can we talk? I just need to talk. If digital devices were going to break the loneliness in our country, our suicide rates would be going down. But this year they're going up. There's things that we need from each other we cannot get from a screen. We cannot get from an app. And I know there's a lot of mental health apps out there, and some of them are really good. But they're never gonna replace real, live, human connection. Never. You know, last year I was taking my car in to get a little work done on it, and just oil change, tire rotation and stuff. And the dealership where I take it to is about 10 minutes from my house. And I was running early that morning, and I looked down and saw I left my phone at home, and I thought, I'm gonna turn around and go back and get it. I thought, no, you're not, Leslie. You're gonna go on, you're gonna look up, you're gonna pay attention, you're gonna practice what you preach this morning. You're gonna start conversation. You're gonna notice things. So the first thing I notice when I go in there is kind of chaos. There's orange construction cones all the way back to the service department, and everybody's just in a bad mood that morning because of little construction. People are throwing their keys at the service desk, and I go back in the lounge and I wait about a half hour, and they come and tell me my car's ready. The service manager's name's Neil. I know him because I take my car in there all the time, and I kind of tapped him on the arm. I said, "Hey, Neil, buddy, don't let all these grouchy people in here today get you in a bad mood. Listen, if the biggest problem they have today is a little construction, give them my number. I'll be really happy to tell them what a bad day looks like." And he kind of looked at me. I said, "You see, Neil, we lost our son 7 years ago to suicide. So I don't sweat the small stuff. Little construction, small stuff." So Neil stops. He's a tall guy. He looks down at me. "Me too, Leslie. I'm in your club." We stood there for about another 5 minutes, and Neil told me about his dad. Said he was a Vietnam vet, came home with a lot of PTSD, and he wouldn't talk to anybody about it. He stuffed it in that invisible backpack. Eventually, that backpack spilled out, and Neil's dad took his life. I got ready to get back in my car, and Neil said, "Can I give you a hug?" I said, "You sure can, buddy." Later on that night, I was getting ready for bed, and I had a message on my phone on my Facebook Messenger. I didn't recognize the number. The woman said, "Hey, you don't know me, but I'm Neil's mom, and I just want to thank you for whatever it was you said to him today, because he never talks about his dad to anybody. And whatever you said, you made him feel seen, and I want to thank you for that." You know why? Because I didn't have this stupid thing in my hand. I was actually noticing things. I was looking around, and I made a connection. He's my buddy now. I need to get my car in quickly. I just call Neil. He's my buddy. I mean, that's how it happens, guys. You can't make a connection when your head's down. You got to look up. You got to notice people. I mean, research already tells us that men have low-quality friendships, maybe just not enough of them. Now, you're only here for 4 years. 4 years on this beautiful campus. You guys and Hampden, Sydney. Sorry I had to mention Hampden, Sydney, but I was there too. I was there this past spring. They have a lot of similar issues that you guys have. A lot of the same problems, same concerns. You only have 2 all-male, do you guys know that? There's only 2 all-male colleges left, you and Hampden, Sydney now. There were 3, now there's only 2. So it's pretty amazing. I love this all-male campus. So how can you connect with your Wabash brothers? How are you gonna do it? I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're a sophomore. I don't care if you're a senior. You know you have 70 clubs on this campus. 70 clubs! They're diverse. Your student body is diverse here. So you've got to be able to find one. You've got to join it. That's where connection's going to be found. Feeling seen and feeling valued. I mean, there's a 3D printing. I was looking them up. There's a 3D printing club. I don't know if anybody's in the 3D printing club. There's a 3D printing club. There's a billiards club. There's an ultimate frisbee club. I mean, the list goes on and on. Every flavor, denomination, you've got to be able to find one. Because what's going to happen when you join the club, you're going to meet some new people. Maybe you recognize their face, but you're going to get to know them. Because you already have a common interest with whatever the club is. Then you take it from there, and you start building that connection. The only way you're going to reap the benefits, the full benefits, the ROI, I know y'all know about ROI, return on investment here, is to reach out and connect with somebody. 1 or 2 buddies. Because vulnerability is a superpower. Vulnerability is a superpower. And here's the deal. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. It bears repeating. Everyone you know who's sitting in here in chapel right now is facing a battle that you know nothing about. And when you can get real and you can cut through all this superficial stuff, you can start to form that real connection. Don't worry about being judged or what they're going to think about you. I'm talking about a friendship that lasts a lifetime. Now, as I wrap up, I want to tell you a story real quickly about 2 Wabash alums that I met last year. I was asked to speak at the Indianapolis Wabash Men's Club. Now, these men, there were about 300 of them. Some of them had been out of Wabash 30 years, 20 years, 15 years. Very successful men. I mean, they had crushed it in life. The man of the year that morning was an orthopedic surgeon. Didn't matter to me. I knew they still were carrying around invisible backpacks because they're men, and that's what men do. So, after I finished speaking, I gave them a throwdown challenge. I told them I wanted them to take one thing out of their invisible backpacks, something they might have been carrying around for a while. I wanted them to get with their Wabash brother. I told them, I said, listen, I have heard about the Wabash Brotherhood for years. The strength of the Wabash Brotherhood, the Wabash Alumni Association, the Wabash Men's Leadership Groups. How about we really test it out here? I want you to get with one of your Wabash brothers, and I want you to do it within the next 24 hours, if not immediately after this breakfast. And I want you to tell them one thing, something. And they need to just hold space and listen. And then I want you to flip it, and I want them to tell you something. So after the breakfast, a lot of people were coming up to me. Sometimes that happens when I speak. People want to talk to me afterwards, and it's always great. So the room it was a big ballroom, and it was kind of thinning out, and I saw these 2 men kind of back in the corner, and I kind of kept my eye on them, and as people started leaving, they waited till everybody was gone in there, and they came up to me. And the one said, well, we took you up on your challenge. He said, and by the way, these guys went way back. They graduated Wabash 20-some years ago. They were in each other's lives. I mean, socially, they lived in the same city. They did the same things together. They knew each other, but they hadn't really fully connected. So the first guy said, I want to let you know something. I never talk about this, but when I was 10 years old, my dad took his life. The other guy looked at him, and his tears started welling up in his eyes. And he said, oh man, I wish I would have known that when we were at Wabash. Because I could have told you when I was 7 years old, my dad took his life. Wow. Talk about lightening the old backpack there. If I'd had an award, I would have given it to them. And I encourage them to share their story. That's what connection's all about. That's it right there. I mean, whatever it is, whatever is weighing you down, you have an opportunity in the next few years to share it with somebody. Talk to your brothers. Be there for them. See what happens when you do. You know, here's my challenge to you guys today. I know we're about to go on the Mental Health Mile Walk, and I hope you're all going to join us out there. I want you to do the same. I want you to find one Wabash brother that you love, that you know, that you trust, and I want you to tell them something, whatever it is. And they're not going to judge you. This is a judgment-free zone, by the way. They're not going to judge you. And you're going to share. And when you finish, they're going to hold space for you, and they're going to listen. They're going to practice their active listening skills. They're going to do the same. Because once again, vulnerability is our greatest strength. So I hope that you'll get out there on our mental health mile, and maybe we can start some of these conversations. We can talk about some things, because I don't want you to wait 20 years after graduating Wabash. I don't want you to carry it around with you your whole life. Take it out of your invisible backpack. Lighten that load. Start connecting. Because as my friend Maya Angelou says, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. Thank you for listening to mine this morning. I love you guys. Take care.
One final announcement. The mental health mile will start immediately as you leave the chapel. Now will you all please rise and join me in singing Old Wabash. Da 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 da.